You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers.
What is up, everybody? How are you doing this fine? Well, whenever you're listening to this, I hope you're doing great. I really appreciate you clicking that download button or stream or whatever the button looks like in your podcast player and spending some time with me. I really, really, really appreciate that. Today, I'm talking to my dude, Taylor Larson from Mixwave. Yeah, this is the first time I'm having anyone from a plugin company. I've been getting into plugins more heavily, and as you may have seen over the last Friday? Yes, last Friday as this episode airs, my good friend Chris Benson released an incredible plugin suite with Mixwave, and Taylor is here to talk all about it, and it really is incredible. I've been playing it for several weeks now. I teased it on the Chasing Tone podcast a while back, and I am genuinely blown away by it, as you'll hear me gush frequently over this entire episode about how well that turned out. And this is just a really cool episode to get to know Taylor better, get to know his backstory, how the company was formed, and all that jazz. I think you're really going to enjoy it. He's a really, really cool guy, and he's done a lot of really, really cool things, and he's a genuine, legit gear nerd. So this is just a perfect episode all around. One quick bit of housekeeping. It's more of a tease, to be honest. I know I tease a lot, but something very cool is coming just around the corner on the Stringjoy front. No, this is not something you're going to have to save up for. That's always the question I get. How much money do I have to save up for this new thing? This is a free thing that I cannot wait to reveal to you all. I don't think a lot of people are going to see this coming, but this is a new thing that is happening on that side of what I do, and I could not be more excited. Let's just say the guitar gear world is getting some more juicy stuff that they will not have to pay money for. Let's just put it that way and leave it at that. So to keep posted on all that, follow all things Stringjoy wherever you follow guitar content on the internet, and I'm sure you will be seeing exactly what I'm talking about very, very soon. And I want to thank everybody that supports that company, because it really does support me directly. So if you need strings, go to Stringjoy. We make amazing stuff. Well, I don't. I'm here in Portland. The team in Nashville makes amazing stuff, and I couldn't be more stoked to be a part of all that. So please pay attention to Stringjoy over the next few weeks, and we've got something really special for you. So anyway, with that teaser out of the way, let's get into this episode with Taylor Larson from Mixwave. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Taylor Larson, producer, mixer, and co-founder of the company Mixwave. What's going on, dude?
Not much. Excited to be here with you right now.
I'm excited to have you here. We had the chance to, get to know each other a little bit the other day. That's not always the case with guests, so that was really nice. But we didn't dive too much into your backstory. We mostly just talked about the cool new stuff you have coming out with our mutual friend, Chris Benson, and all that. But I want to know more about you. You don't just wake up one day and have a really awesome, plug-in company. That's not usually how that works. So what got you started? What got you started playing music and producing records and all that jazz? I want it all.
So for me, it's funny. I was started on guitar when I was like maybe 3 or 4. I don't even remember really learning it. Like, I guess I kind of learned it maybe before I could even talk, And so like I grew up playing like Green Day, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, all the stuff that was cool back then. And my goal in life was to just be like a famous guitar player in a band. That was like my dream. And so by the time high school came around, I was skateboarding at a pretty high level, you know, for my age, and playing guitar as well. And I kind of made a decision, you know, because you fall, you can hurt your wrist, and then that can affect the way that you could play guitar. And so I made the choice to just go to playing guitar and doing it full time. So I did what anyone who wanted to be a guitar player in a band does, and started a band in high school. Or actually, before I started a band, there was this band that won Battle of the Bands my freshman year, and they were like an 80s rock, 80s metal band, like Judas Priest style, Iron Maiden. And they needed a guitar player. And I thought, you know, it's not the music that I love. I mean, I certainly liked it because my parents liked that kind of stuff, or my dad at least. My mom was more like The Cure and U2 and stuff like that. But yeah, I joined it because they won Battle of the Bands, and I thought it'd be cool. So I joined that band, played with them for a little bit, and then I wanted to do my own band, and it was with all the older dudes that kind of influenced me in the older grades. And we started doing like screamo emo, because that's what was in, like when I was in high school, like bands like Thrice and Hot Water Music and Poison the Well. Like that,
such a good band.
The heavier stuff like Converge and Botch and Majority Rule, Page 99, all that kind of stuff. I loved all that stuff. And so like I made that, and it's funny, like I remember we did Battle of the Bands next year, and it was like heavy music like that. And the teachers were just like, what is this? Like, this is crazy. But like we were good. Like our drummer was really good, and you know, we had our stuff down. But so I did that for a bit, and then there was a pop rock, pop punk kind of band from the area called Ever Since Radio, and they needed a guitar player, and that was really cool for me because, you know, I kind of got out of the screaming and the heavy stuff the more I matured. And so I joined that band, and that was awesome because I got to play with like the Starting Line and Motion City Soundtrack and all these cool like pop punk bands, and play these cool festivals. So I did that for a little bit, and then I wanted to make something where I was kind of the leader of the band. So I started a band, and you can find them now. They're a band called Life on Repeat on Equal Vision. They broke up, but they had kind of a strong run at it. So I started that band, and, you know, we kind of built from the ground up. And I was touring, and one day I was just like, man, I hate this. Like, I hate traveling. I hate being in a 15 passenger crammed with other people. Sometimes we'd have to sleep in it, and like you'd sleep in like the little kind of area where there's like those hooks that hold down the seats, and it'll be in your rib cage when you wake up. And like, I don't know, I just had a lot of anxiety as a teenager, and I was like, man, I don't know, like I don't really like this, but I love writing, I love performing, I love playing. And so we recorded a record with a dude named Paul Levitt in Baltimore, Maryland. And Paul did like All Time Low. He worked with Brian McTernan, who did a lot of those bands that I mentioned earlier. And so like I got to the studio, and I was just blown away. Like I saw the big Trident console, and the distressors, all the outboard gear, and all the cool stuff that you see, and watched him mic up drums, watched him mic up guitars, and I was like, man, I'm in love with this. Like, this is way cooler than, you know, sitting in a van for 8 hours and then like getting out and performing. So I spoke to my nana, my grandmother at the time, and she kind of recommended that I try doing that instead of going to college, because she was like, if you have good ears and you can get good at that, then you'll always do better doing something you're good at, and that's music, you know? So I sold my orange amp. I sold like everything but my guitar, and I bought a MacBook. Like, this was in 2006 maybe, and it was like,
Okay.
the Apple store was as big as maybe a Starbucks. Like, it was pretty small. And it was right when they switched to Intel processors. And I got a MacBook. I quit my band, and, you know, they were really pissed off and bummed out. And I just started recording. I was living in Ocean City, Maryland at the time, which is kind of like a beach town area. And the cool thing is, they had a pretty intense scene over there. Like, you could go to a church hall and watch like Boy Sets Fire or The Sleeping, which is a Victory Records band, or, you know, any of those bands like coming up. It was really cool because a lot of the tours would go through there. I mean, they even had X Games there at one point, and I think Green Day played it. But it's, you know, it's a surf, skateboarding kind of area. And I used to play those shows opening for those bands as a kid. And there was a pretty decent music scene. Like, it's so weird because they tore it down, and like no one does that there anymore. But like, there were shows every weekend, and like all kinds of different bands, like ska bands, punk bands, like you name it, you know, we had it. And so I started recording for like $50 a song on my MacBook, and I got like a Line 6 tone port and a 57 and knew absolutely nothing. But I knew I could write with these bands and make really good songs, and kind of either record them well or play it myself and make them sound like they were really good. So I worked really hard for a summer and saved up a lot of the money and kind of showed it to my grandmother at the time to show her I was serious. And long story short, I kind of decided that like I wanted to move to, you know, a more, I guess you would say, like exciting city area. So I moved down here to Bethesda, Maryland, which is, you know, 2 minutes away from Washington, D.C. Like, I can leave my house, turn right, and walk for a couple minutes, and I'm in D.C. But what's cool about this area, so Brian McTurnan's from this area. He's a really influential producer. I mean, he even did things kind of more recent, like Balance and Composure. Not too recent, but I love that record, and, you know, Circa Survive, and he's done a lot of cool stuff. And so
Definitely, yeah.
He was from here, and there was this house in Beltsville that he did like Darkest Hour, and again, like Hot Water Music Thrice, a bunch of like really cool punk bands, probably even Converge in that spot. And then another dude, Matt Squire, took it over, and he did bands there like The Receiving End of Sirens. He did Panic at the Disco, like their big record. Paul worked on All Time Low there. Like, this house, it looked like there was just like a garage, and you would walk in and it was a studio. But anyways, I moved to this area, like just kind of packed up all my stuff and moved just because I wanted to like see how far I could take this. And at first I was renting space from Paul Levitt, and I would have to drive to Baltimore, and I hated that. And so I went on Google and looked for recording studios. And ironic enough, the building I'm in right now, the studio I'm in right now, was owned by a different place. And this was, I don't know, over 10 years ago. And I walked in and said, "Can I rent a room from you guys?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." They had a room that I could rent for like $1,000 a month. And it's crazy because I don't know if you've heard of Bethesda Software, like the video game company.
I have.
Yeah, so like they did like Fallout here, they did Skyrim, like all those old video games. They recorded all the voiceovers in the studio that I'm in right now. And,
wow.
And so like, yeah, and like they would do like Discovery Channel stuff here, like voiceovers for Shark Week and even like cartoons and stuff. So it was pretty cool, and it was a pretty insane studio, and it happened to be like 2 blocks from my house where I was living. And so I got so lucky. I got to move my gear in, and then I started recording there, and it was like, you know, I have to do this. I have rent to pay, and I have to do this full time. And I couldn't get enough of it. You know, I was booked. I would even do like 2 bands in a day at some point. For people aspiring to do that, I wouldn't recommend it, because if I could go back in time and kind of have a talk with myself, it would be that you're going to burn yourself out, and then you're not going to have that same kind of hunger and drive later on. So it's really important to pace yourself and kind of take things slow. But yeah, I mean, my career just kind of started from that point. I met the guys in Periphery. They were local to here, which is, you know, a gent band, and met the guys from Darkest Hour from this area, did a record for them. A band called Sky Eats Airplane, who was pretty big at the time. And I just kind of got lucky because I didn't really know what I was doing at that point, and I was kind of like learning it along the way, but I just had like this self-belief and confidence that like I can do this, and just kind of evolved over time. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I got to producing. And, you know, you make money and you spend it all on gear, or almost, you know, all of it on gear, and kind of build up your arsenal over the years. And what's crazy is I was in that studio maybe 2 years, and the people that were renting it, that I was subletting from, decided they either retired or they wanted to like move to a smaller place, because this facility is pretty intense. And so I had to leave. Like, I was renting from them, they were leaving, and I remember asking like the company that was renting it, like, will you continue to rent me this room? And they kind of just laughed at me. They were like, yeah, if you want to rent the whole thing, you know, it's $7,000 a month plus whatever else. And I was just like, yeah, I can not do that. So,
right.
So I moved to this other spot that was like a mile away. That was like kind of like a rap studio. It was kind of not as nice as what I had. And I remember being so bummed, but I went into that space and I put in like 7 years there and had a lot of success. The drum room was really cool. And then I wanted to leave that space because there was a new landlord and they wanted to double my rent. And I just thought it was hilarious for the space that it was. And so I moved to my house. Like, we have this really big sunroom, and I had a friend, this guy who had a studio like 20 minutes away. He recorded bands like Avail and Clutch, and he had a really cool drum room. So I was like, I can just rent his room and then work out of my house doing the mixing, guitar tracking, and vocal tracking. And then my partner and kind of mentor, Jeff Cohen, he owns a lot of different companies. He owns like Killer Merch and Sumerian Records, which is a pretty dominant metal record label.
Oh yeah.
I went to him about this software because I'd been making software with other companies, like in other artists, and it did really well, but I didn't like that I couldn't control the visual of it and control the promotion, because I always feel like sometimes if you get too aggressive with promoting something, or like you do things that are kind of cringe or that look bad, I don't really want my name associated with that. I'm not trying to dog anyone, but it's like, I always feel like the product should speak for itself, and, you know, you can promote stuff or pay for marketing, but it can't feel like one of those weight loss scams or something like that.
Right.
So,
right.
I had drawn up all these designs for plugins, and I was about to do them with different companies. And I went to Jeff and I was like, can we make a plugin company? Like, I have all these cool designs and all this stuff. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. Like, Jeff was like, for example, this studio, no one came here for 10 years. Like, people had looked at it, but I guess no one could afford it. And so nobody moved in. So Jeff was like, well, we need like a headquarters. Like, let's go look at your old spot. So we came in here and we were lucky enough to get it. And so this is kind of the Mixwave headquarters now, which is ironically the first place that I ever worked out of, like, professionally. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, I mean, Jeff and I just started from there. He's a lawyer, and he was Van Halen's lawyer, Devin Townsend. He did Lamb of God. He did like MTV, Pimp My Ride. Like, he's a very successful lawyer. That's kind of how he started out, and he's really good at what he does. So it was really cool to start the company because it's like I could focus on the products, and then, you know, he could draw up the agreements between the artists. And, you know, he's a guy that just loves music. Like, he loves like the indie rock, XM, alt rock. And, you know, most of our time we spent is he would come to my old studio and we would just listen to music for hours, like with, you know, all my friends and kind of our group that I had there. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I got here today.
So how does your story really resonates with me, because I think we share a lot of, well, we already talked about this off the air, but we're the same age, literally.
Yeah.
And a lot of, like, every band you were talking about there, I was like, oh man, I love that band. I love that band. Oh, I love that band. Like, so many memories came rushing back. But also, I really relate to you with the touring thing. And I've said this on the podcast many, many times. You know, I just assumed growing up, like, I loved playing with my band. I loved making music. I loved recording. But I knew, like, I hate road trips.
Yeah.
Like regular road trips. So a touring road trip, which is even less comfortable. No, I'm just not. No, I'm not going to do that. Like, I knew I didn't have it in me to do that. And I kind of falsely assumed, like I think a lot of people do, that's the only, if you like music, that's the only way you're going to have a career in it.
Yeah.
Is if you're in a touring band or a touring, you know, musical act of some sort. And that's just so not true. It's weird how narrow our viewpoint was back then, right?
Yeah.
There's guitar techs. There's, you know, there's any number of things. There's amp builders. There's pedal makers. There's producers. There's merch guys. There's, you know, front of house people. There's so many different ways you can have a job and stay connected to music if that's what you really love. And I love that you, like, tried it, was like, nope, not for me. I'm going to try this other thing.
Yeah.
And it worked out. And that was kind of, you know, my path was a little bit different because I just went, well, I'm never going to be a musician, so I guess I'll be a mechanic. Which, I mean, I don't know what kind of logic is there, but I did like turning wrenches. And so I guess that I ended up not liking it once I was doing it every day. But, you know, and then I realized, I got to get back into music somehow. And that's where this podcast came from. So your story really resonates with me. And I'm glad you were able to find a way that did work for you, because a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah. I think, like, in arts, you kind of, like, you can have what you love and you can have what your dream is, but you have to be able to pivot and kind of take whatever lane presents itself. And to me, that's not, like, it's not really a compromise. It's just kind of like going with a flow, you know? So it's like, for me, when I get an opportunity, I'm going to make the best out of that opportunity that I possibly can. And, like, for me, it was just a huge win, because it's like, dude, I love writing. Now I can write every month with a different band, like a whole album. And so it was awesome. Like, I don't know. I think I even preferred it over, like, performing in that stuff. I mean, that stuff's cool. And what I will say is like, so I did a record for a band called From First to Last. And if you're not familiar, it was the band that Skrillex was in. It was like his first band, and it's kind of the emo stuff growing up. And I did a record for them. I think it was maybe 2014, 2015. And the guitar player, Matt Good, became my best friend. Like, dude, he was from Arizona, and he would come down and kind of live with me for months on end and then go back. And like, I would show him recording stuff, and, we would just hang out. And so we did that record, and he was like, dude, like, I want you to be in the band with me, like play guitar. And I was like, all right, like, cool. That's a kind of a cool thing from my past. And I got to do tours where you would tour in a bus, and it was comfy, and you had your own bunk, and like, that's a completely different world. And what was so odd is like, when I would go on tour as like a kid, like, I didn't have money growing up. Like, so I would show up on the tour, and like the guy, in the band that kind of ran it, we'd go in like a Wawa, and he'd be like, hey, why aren't you getting food? And I would just be like, oh, I don't have any money. He's like, you didn't bring money for the tour? And I was like, no. And he'd be like, all right, well, I'll get your food for the tour. Like, that's fine. Like, you're writing our music and blah, blah, blah. So like, I'll help out. But in this case, it was like, we had great per diems. Like, I had a lot of money from recording. And so like, it was just so different. It was like a comfortable tour, and that was a lot of fun. And it was kind of cool to come back around to it later on in life and kind of just get to do it for fun. And there was no struggle. It was easy to sleep, and it was awesome. I was with my best friends.
That's the dream right there. That's what everybody wants to aspire to. And it's kind of funny that you got to that level through sort of unorthodox means.
Yeah.
Like you did the touring thing. You said, that's not for me, started down a different path. And then that led you to getting the chance to do a comfortable tour, which is, it's kind of a weird thing to think about, right?
Yeah.
You never know where this is going to lead you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. 'Cause like you could be recording a band that does really well. And like, for me, I'm very hands-on. Like, I like to write, and I like to like track guitar on other people's records. And so like, sometimes these bands will hit you up and be like, hey, like, this guy can't make this tour, or we kicked this guy out of the band. Would you do this tour with us? And 9 out of 10 times I'd say no, but that one was just awesome. Like, that was just like, it was a big tour. And, we were treated extremely well. And yeah, I just wanted to know what it's like to tour in a bus and have all the, all that cool stuff. So it was awesome. I understand why people like to do it.
So let's circle back to Mixwave as a company.
Sure.
Right. So, I mean, we can talk about this all now because this will be coming out after the official release. But my introduction to you was through Chris Benson. And so, as you're aware, and the listeners are massively aware, I'm a huge Benson fanboy. Chris and I are very good friends, and we're always talking and doing stuff. And he told me about the plugins pretty early. And admittedly, like, I was a little skeptical, to say the least. I was just like, but Chris, you make tube amps. Like, why? Why are you doing this to me? Why would you do this to me? And it was not until he was like, all right, I have the plugins ready. Come over and play them, and he's got a decent little studio set up there. And I plugged in and was playing through the monitors. And I'm very, very aware of his products. I own a lot of them, both the pedals and amps. And I was just astounded at the sound, and more importantly, the feeling that was coming out of the speakers. I was like, this is doing the thing that your amps do. This is doing the thing that your pedals do. It's responding appropriately. I've never experienced a plugin. Granted, I've had fairly limited experience with plugins. There's some I really like as far as guitar-based stuff goes anyway.
Yeah.
And I was just absolutely blown away by how accurate everything was. And I'm not saying that just because you're here. I mean, Chris and I were literally laughing. I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. This is so insane. I was like, people are going to freak out about this once they actually get to play it and play it through monitors. It's insane. Like, what does it take to make something feel like the real deal the way these do?
Okay, so the story with Benson is that we kind of came up with something with guitar amp modeling, and there's a lot of secretive stuff with this, so I'm not going to put too much on here, but we came up with things where we were just like, man, this like sounds so much better than your Kemper, your Axe Effects, or even some of the other companies, because I've always tried to make amp sims work, for the last 5, 6, 7 years. I would say ever since Softtube came out with like the amp room bundle, I was a big fan of it, because for recording, it's amazing because you can like take your DI in, you can edit your DI and use that plugin kind of as the amp. And then you could either reamp later, or you could have something that you can always tweak forever. So like, I'm like you in the sense of like, I love analog gear and I love tube gear, and, digital can't be good enough, but I'm also very realistic, and I also don't want to lie. So like, as soon as the plugins start getting good or good enough to where I can, manipulate them into something that I want, I'm doing it. Because it's for me, it's workflow, and it's at the end of the day, if I do mixes and people are loving them, then, I don't think it matters what I used. But anyways, like I'd had a lot of bands sent me Kemper and Axe Effects, and like, man, I'd have to go in and like go on FabFilter or use Soothe and find all these notches and the treble, and it was just like super harsh. And a lot of the newer kind of more relevant amp sim companies would send me, NFRs to try stuff out. And like some of them, they'd be cool on clean tone and be a little ice picky. And then you go to like distorted stuff and you're just like, man, this is a mess. So
for the listeners who maybe aren't familiar, what's an NFR?
NFR, not for resale. It's essentially just like somebody giving you their plugin for free to test it out.
Gotcha.
And you can use it forever. You just can't sell it to someone else. So,
Totally.
But yeah, so we came up with this thing, and like first we tried on some other amps. I was making a record with this dude, Jason Richardson, who's like a metal shredder guy. He's like one of my favorite people. Like, he's awesome. The music is kind of intense for me. I will admit I find it challenging, but I also love the talent aspect of it. And the dude's like Hans Zimmer. Like he programs like crazy orchestras, and I don't know. It's just really cool. Like, even if you're not into it, like, you have to respect it when you hear it. But anyways, he booked a record with me, and he was like, I want to do everything analog. I want to do everything real. I'm bringing like my Bricasti reverb and my pedals and my synths and blah, blah, blah. And that was when we first started trying to make an amp. So we had 2 amps that we were going to use on the record, and we got the betas back to test out, and we were like shooting them out. And most people in the room, they couldn't tell when I would switch back and forth. And then if they did pick one, they always picked the software one. So I was like, man, we really have something here. Like, this is pretty incredible what our team has been able to come up with. And so one night I'm on Instagram, I see like a Benson story, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call him. Like, I'm going to talk to him about this. So I texted him and was like, hey, like, you got a second for a call? And I'll never forget it. Like, it was summer. It was super humid outside, and I was out on my phone, just pacing up and down the street that I live on, talking to him for probably an hour. And I was just telling him, like, dude, we have this thing and like, it's incredible. And I feel like he was really skeptic. Like, he was just like, look, man, like, I've messed around with the Kemper profiles before and like, you know, it's not really it. And I'm like, no, I know, like, but trust me on this one. And so like, I finally kind of convinced him to let us like, you know, take a crack at it. And I was like, all right, so I have to crush this if you know, he's going to do this, because we put a lot of time and money into it. And our goal is ultimately to be able to release it. But also, you know, in our contract, it says if he doesn't like it, it doesn't get released. So it's kind of the ultimate, like at the end, he could be like, nah, doesn't sound good, which, you know, I wouldn't want to release anything that doesn't sound good anyway. But so I got the beta back for that and went back and forth between my Chimera head and that one, and just kind of went through a couple revisions. And, you know, I'd play on them. I'm like, all right, the feel is there. The cool thing is the feel was always there from the beginning. It was mainly just kind of getting the brightness and EQ curve and nature of the breakup. And so I went back and forth with my team and I would send them, okay, here's an example and here's ours. And, you know, it needs to be more like this. And then I finally got it to a point where like I sat here for an hour just going back and forth A and B on like a clip that I had a DI just looping through both of them. And I was like, man, there's no way he's going to tell the difference on this. Like, if I close my eyes, I definitely don't hear the difference. And I just obsessed over it. And I was super nervous. Like, I was so nervous to send it to him. I was like, oh, like, what if he has, like, you know, insane, like, dog hearing or something, and he can hear something that I can't, which I mean, I've been training my ears for over 10 years. And, you know, I feel like I have a really good grasp on what I'm hearing. And so I sent it to him and I was like, A or B? And he was like, B. I think it was B is what he picked. He was like, B has to be the amp. Like, there's no way it's not. And I'm like, B is the software. And from that point, he was kind of all in. Like, he was like, all right, like, wow. And I think the cool thing with him is he's got such good ears and he's such a smart dude that like he sets the pride aside as well, because it's like he made these designs and he's all about the tube world and you know, his stuff is like point to point, hand wired, and like this should not be like it shouldn't be that, you know, we made a plugin and it's digital and it sounds and feels like the real thing. But like I think the fact that he's willing to admit that and embrace it is why he's kind of an innovator in my eyes. And I think he's going to break down a lot of walls for a lot of other companies, because he's kind of, I would say, one of the first. I mean, you have some other companies that have done stuff, but I don't think they've done it in the way he has. And so we got the amp kind of nailed down and we went crazy with the cabinet. Like, I already had his 212 here and it had the Celestion speakers in it. And he said, well, I have these other speakers, these Weber speakers that I've been using. So he sent me those, a pair of those. And we took those and we blasted sine sweeps and pink noise and all this sound through them for like, you know, a couple weeks just to like break the speakers in because they were brand new. And then we took impulse responses of the top and bottom speaker with 20 different microphones with like a million different combinations. Like, we're literally, dude, it took so long. It's like we're literally moving them all around the room. And we did both the Celestion speakers, top and bottom, which is cool because it definitely sounds different. I mean, it's as you would expect. The bottom has a little bit more robust top end, or I'm sorry, low end. And then the top has kind of that air thing. And so like there's so many combinations you can do in the software with being able to blend the top and bottom speaker and then like switch between the Weber or the Celestion. Like there's a million combinations. And one other really cool thing that we do is we have these things called tube traps, and we built, it's called an attack wall. And so it's like a little circle around the room. So it removes the room from the equation, which is something I love. Like, I mean, there's people that have room and they let you blend the room in, but I'm like, no, I really want to hear the cabinet and the mic. And if there's room that I want to add, I'll do it with a reverb or something else. So, because a room can inflict harsh stuff. It can inflict rumble. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like every room, there's different spaces that have different things that are, less than optimal. So having this kind of attack wall method, it really lets you get the cleanest sound of the microphone and the speaker cabinet. So yeah, we just packed this thing full of features, and we put things in there that you couldn't do in real life. Like there's wet, dry, mix knobs, and you can move things to stereo. You can change the order of things, and you can essentially have 4 different speakers with 20 different mics that you can pick through. So yeah, we went crazy.
Yeah, you can run a Chimera into a Chimera if you want to, which is not something you can actually do in real life. So
yeah,
fun stuff. It's funny that you mentioned that about the room. I just had a really dumb moment with Chris that is directly related to room, because I don't know if you saw, he did the rock box for Big KO. And KO was on the podcast, and he asked me, he knew that Chris and I were friends. He's like, hey, do you want to do a video of that before I get it? I was like, yeah, of course I do. And so I did. I played it at Chris's shop. It's like, cool, this thing sounds great. This is going to be easy. I brought it to the shred shed. And this is something that I knew, but I just totally brain farted and didn't think about it. But I set the amp up, got it mic'd up how I normally would, something like that. And I was just standing there playing it, and I was like, I messaged Chris. I'm like, I think something's wrong with this amp. I don't know if like a tube went kind of funny in transport or what, but it sounds weird now. And then I was like, it's really late at night. Let me come back with fresh ears in the morning. Maybe I'm just losing my mind. And I plugged it in and was like, yeah, it's okay. And then I had to go do something else. I finally went to go do the demo, got everything all set up again. And I was playing it. I'm like, no, it's got that weird sound again. What is going on? So I messaged Chris. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. Something is going on with this. I don't know what it is, but if you want to come listen to it or whatever. And he comes over, he's looking around, and he looks at the amp, and he's like, and we play it for a minute. And then he was like, dude, I was like, what? He's like, look where the amp is. And I was like, oh no. I cannot believe I did this. So the shred shed is kind of a hall shaped room. And the peak goes up pretty high. It goes up to about 14.6, and it's, right in the center of the room. I had the amp set dead center of the room, so it was equidistant with the walls and right in the middle of the peak. It
was going out of phase.
It was getting all kinds of weird cancellations. Yeah. Even when you're standing in front of it, it wasn't just the mic sound. It sounded weird if you stood in front of it and played. It didn't sound right because the sound waves were bouncing off equidistant and canceling each other out and just sounding stupid. He took and cocked it and moved it like 2.5 feet and like cocked it at an angle. All of a sudden, it's back. Like I was like, I cannot believe I did that. And also I can't believe how big of a difference that made. Like. All he did was move it 2.5 feet. We recorded like a quick clip. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can do the video now.
That's crazy.
It sounded really bad. He's like, dude, you freaked me out. He's like, I thought I was losing my mind and something happened. I was like, I thought I was losing my mind. So yeah, pay attention to where your amp is in the room.
Yeah, because you have to think
difference.
like if a company does IRs, right, and like, people want the ability to drag the mic back, 3 to 5 feet, somewhere in there, maybe even more. And like, say you get the mic in like a null or something, like, it's just like, why would you want that? So for us, we build this kind of like, attack wall around it, and it prevents all of that, and it makes it insanely flat. And it's, for me, you get the charm of the speaker and you get the charm of the mic, and there's nothing to mask that. And to me, that's huge. I wish every company would do that, but yeah, that's another thing that I was going to mention is like, he sent those Webers, and like, those in the software are the best impulse responses I've ever heard in my life. Like, I would feed other amps into that. I don't know why. It's an open back cab, so like, it shouldn't be that you can like put metal or like other things through it, but you can, and it's like so lush and like just sounds so amazing and has that kind of squishy feel, and it's not stiff and lifeless. And yeah, I just think it's so ironic that like whatever he's got going in his world translates so well to digital,
I don't know. I've always, this is just like the Benson. This show has had many episodes where Chris was not on it, and it's just the Benson gush fest. I just love everything he does. And honestly, when I'm recording stuff, I sometimes feel like it's cheating because I don't have to do that much to, like, once I record the guitar amp sound, I don't really have to do a lot in post to make it sound good.
Yeah.
Especially not for something that's like a demo where you don't have a bunch of other instruments competing for space.
Yeah.
I just, I'll be playing a pedal or whatever, and I just mic the amps up how I usually do, and it works like every single time, at least for my ears. So
yeah,
he's a smart fella. He every time I've doubted him, he's proved me wrong. So I just stopped doubting him. So yeah, you guys crushed it with this plugin. I'm so excited to play around with it some more. I already have a bunch of ideas of things I want to try that, like you said, you literally cannot do in the physical world, which is always fun. I mean, it's fun to push the envelope and see where you can take things. It's really wild.
I'll tell you one thing that's really cool. Do you ever track bass?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so one thing I did the other day, and I kind of just stumbled on this setup, is I part my bass into 2 different tracks, sometimes 3. That's because I want to have one that kind of is clean and has that low fundamental that carries the song. And then I want to have one that I can kind of get disgusting on and get that more grindy, clanky bass tone, that attitude that brings it forward. And I took the track that I distort and mess with, and I put, instead of what I normally put, I deleted that and put the standalone Benson preamp pedal. And already it was great. Like, it sounded awesome. But what I did is I rolled some of the lows on the input filter. So it was kind of changing the nature of the distortion. So instead of, lows kind of maxing it out and making it fuzzier, it kind of cut more. And so I think I did the filter to somewhere like 120 hertz, maybe somewhere between like 90 and 150. And it completely changed the nature of the distortion, and it got so cool. Like it almost sounded exactly like an amp. And then I went on the out filter and I rolled off some of the top end. I think it was down to like 7K or 6K. And what that did is like that kind of simulated a cabinet or something. And it has to be one of the sickest bass tones I've ever gotten. Like, and I don't even think the pedal was intended for that, but just the fact that we have those filters and in the in and out gain, you can completely change the nature of something. Like, we were doing that yesterday. My buddy brought like his mini Moog over, and I was doing the same thing, but like rolling the low end all the way to 1K. And it literally made a synth sound like brass or like a flute or something. Like, it completely changes the nature of what you're feeding the pedal. So it's really cool what you can do with these plugins.
I'm so excited to play around with them. You just cost me probably 2 weeks of screwing around with stuff, honestly. But yeah, I talked about it. I couldn't really say what it was, but it was a few weeks ago. I also do the Chasing Tone podcast with Wampler.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about, whoa, what's new in your world? And I had literally just came from Chris's house after playing it. And I was like, I just played one of the most incredible plugins I've ever heard. And I can't say anything else about it. And I will tell you in a few weeks when it's public. So I'm sure everybody was just mad at me. I probably shouldn't have said anything, but I literally just came from Chris's house. So I was like, I have to talk. I have to say something.
Yeah.
I have to say something about it.
I mean, imagine having it for, I don't know, maybe it's been somewhere between 4 or 6 months that we've been working on this. It's like, I wanted to put it out the day the first beta worked and it looked like Microsoft Paint. I was just like, man, people need this. And I started using it on the stuff I was doing. So it's pretty tough to keep that in when you're so excited about stuff. And I know Chris is insanely excited as well. Me and him talk on the phone a lot and we would both just kind of stop and laugh. It's like, we did it, man. I can't believe this.
Yeah, so it's really exciting stuff. But this is probably the worst time to try to dive into this because we're getting close to the end of the podcast. But
sure,
outside of all the Benson stuff, Mixwave has a lot of other things. What did you guys actually start with?
So it's crazy because our intention never was to do drums. I'm kind of known for my drum sound, so people are stoked when they can have that. But the first thing I drew up was this bus processing concept where it was if you put these plugins on these buses, there's a guitar bus, a bass bus, an effects bus, a synth bus, and a master bus, your song would sound professional. So I came up with all these different things, like a compressor that fed into a harmonic thing that had a widener, and I sketched it all out. And that's what I took to Jeff initially to start the company. And that was kind of this is what I want to make. And so we started the company, and my assistant, Ernie, we were making a record, and he was like, check this out. I took all the drums from the record, all the samples of the drums, the cymbals, everything. And I took your mix too and built it into this player. And so he took a song that I had mixed that had already been released, and he was showing me toggling between what he did versus what the drummer played. And I was like, damn, that's insane. I've never liked drum samplers. I've never used them on records, and I've never been a fan of how they sound, especially the cymbals. And this dude figured it out. And I was like, well, that's mixed. So, you're kind of tied to that sound. And he's like, check this out. You push a button and all of a sudden it's just the raw samples. So it's you literally just mic'd a kit and recorded it in with no mixing. So I was like, that's pretty incredible. So when we made the company, it was what can we start with now to kind of get our feet off the ground? Because it's tough making a software company. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts involved, a lot of different DSP engineers and different people that you have to work with. I mean, we have a pretty insane team for just starting out. So it was what can we do now that sounds great, that can kind of build the reputation of the company? And so I brought in one of my good friends, Luke Holland. He's a kind of a famous YouTube drummer, if anyone wants to check him out. He's insanely talented. And I told him about the company. I asked him if he wanted to be a part of it and kind of work in the A&R world of it. And so the first thing we did is we made a drum virtual instrument with a drummer named Thomas Pridgeon, who played with bands like Trash Talk and the Mars Volta. Trying to think of who else. I think he played with Suicidal Tendencies. And he was just me and a lot of my friends' favorite drummer. He's so good, man. It's insane, and it was even more insane watching him in person. But I reached out to him and I was like, hey, you want to make this virtual instrument? It was like during COVID. It was like no one's playing shows right now. Like, you want to fly out here and like we're going to make your kit in the virtual world and allow your fans to essentially use you as their session drummer. And he was like, let's do it. Like, no questions asked. He just said yes. And he just flew out and we did it. And it's funny. Like, I don't even think he really knew what we were doing until like the second time we flew him out for content and we put him on the E-kit and let him play it. And he just freaked out. He was like, dude, that sounds like me. That's me. Like, how did you guys do that? Like, my ride cymbal, like all the articulations are there when I move up and down the ride, like just like flipping out about it. And so like we started with the drum stuff, and right now we have Thomas Pridgeon out. We have Tony Royster Jr., who's like, again, one of those iconic legendary drummers. Like, I remember watching videos of him when he was like 12 on like Modern Drummer Festival, just doing the most insane solo you've ever seen. And, you know, he played with Jay-Z. He's on tour with Katy Perry right now. He's literally like the pinnacle of being a drummer. And so we did one with him. We did one with Mario Duplantier from Gojira, which is like,
nice.
That's so sick too. I mean, Gojira is such a cool band, and I used to love their mixes growing up, and especially for metal, like having those as a reference. And so we did his, and people really freaked out about that. And then lastly, we did Lou Collins, which is one of our owners, and you know, it's really cool. That's where we started, but now we're branching out into the mixing tools and the guitar amps, and we're going to do all kinds of stuff. We're going to do it all. Reverb, mixing, synth, everything. You name it, we're going to do it.
I love it. I love it. Keep me in the loop, man. I'm becoming very nerdy about all this stuff, which I never thought I would be, but it's legit and it's really good. So keep killing it, because it's really amazing what is possible now. And to get these tools to creators who otherwise wouldn't have access to things like this, that's what's so cool about all this. Now, like with the tools that are available now, you know, if you have the drive, you can make some really incredible music just right in your house.
Yeah,
you know?
and that was the goal for us. Like, for me, for my company, the motto is literally what Steve Jobs said at Apple, like in '98. It was, you start at the customer and their experience, and you engineer backwards to the technology. And that's essentially what we do. It's like giving somebody mixed drums that will work in a mix. Like, you know, when we did Thomas, like, I'm sitting here and I'm putting his software against all these different types of music. Like, I'll put it in metal, I'll put it in pop, I'll put it in synthwave, I'll do all this stuff, and making little tweaks so that it breathes and it works in all those different genres. I mean, it's very challenging, but it's also like, I know no one else has done that. I mean, you have like Slate drums and Superior and stuff, and those were all really cool because it was like, hey, this is a really well recorded kit done in a professional studio with top tier gear. But to me, that's like the first step. It's like, you know, somebody could get that, but they might not know how to mix that or make that work. So my goal was always like, you know, to have somebody, you could have a talented kid in his bedroom that can write a hit song or write something incredible, and he might know nothing about mixing, but it's like, if you use these, and you can literally pick the drummer you want to work with and pick the snare and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, if you use these with this, that's the whole point of it. Is I'm trying to take my job. I'm essentially trying to make myself obsolete as a mixer and producer. Like, you don't need to work with me anymore. Here's the sound. Have it in your bedroom. And that's why with Benson, you know, you're doing presets and everybody else is. It's because we want to give somebody a quick solution so that they don't have to think about this stuff and they can be more about the music, you know?
Yeah, I am so excited to dive into that. I have some really wacky ideas that I have done versions of myself here in the shred shed that aren't, again, that's not something that people can do on their own typically. So it'll be really fun to see if I can recreate that. And I'm pretty sure I can to some degree with this plugin.
Oh yeah.
And get people to, be able to have that same fun experience that I get to have, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But dude, this has been a really excellent talk, and I'm really happy that you came on and talked about all this stuff. I do have a couple classic questions, though,
Sure.
that I have to get to before we wrap up the main episode.
Okay.
But before I do, I like to give the guests the opportunity to shout out anybody they want to shout out, say hi to their grandma, anything you want to say to a couple thousand people. Now's the time to do it.
I don't really have anyone to shout out. More so just I'm so excited for any of you that want to try this stuff. We include a trial with it. So if you don't want to take my word or your word for this, you can download a trial and live with the software. But I'm just so excited to see how people react when they try this thing. That's pretty much it. Like, I hope you can enjoy it the way that we do. I know you will. And I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Absolutely. Sounds good, man. All right. First of the classic questions. Here we go. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Boss pedal. Wow. I had this weird thing growing up where when I was a teenager and you would sit on, AOL Instant Messenger and go on Google and even the early YouTube, I was like, Boss aren't true bypass, so they suck. So I always kind of stayed away from them. But I remember when I was a kid and I had a pedal board, I think there was only 2 Boss pedals I had. Maybe it was 3. I had like the digital delay, like the blue and white one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was the DD3, which is awesome, by the way. Like I remember I had that in the DL4 and I was always like, this Boss one sounds better, but the DL4 is like so much more flexible. And like I would always record loops and do crazy stuff with it. But yeah, there was that one. I think I had a Slow Gear. You remember those?
Oh, man.
That was
legendary.
Like, because I had a friend that was like, he played synth and he had like Fender Rhodes and like all these cool things. And we used to listen to like the Appleseed Cast and Explosions in the Sky and all that kind of stuff. And like, I remember him being like, dude, you got to find a Slow Gear. Like, these are really rare and they're really cool. So I think I had one of those, or like maybe they made something else that was that, but it was called something else. I don't remember, but I remember that was one. And then just the tuner.
Yeah.
TU2 or TU1, whatever it was back then.
Lots of people say the tuner. The Slow Gear is a rare one. It's hard to find. It's harder to find and more expensive now than ever.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool pedal.
Yeah.
That's a fun one. Okay, this is the final question, and this is the one that gets a little bit dicey, a little bit controversial. So hopefully, we can get through this.
Okay.
What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Me and my friend have this joke. We call it Pine Pep Peen. It's pineapple, pepperoni, and jalapeno. It's like we always get it. It's my favorite.
Thin crust, thick crust. You got a favorite pizzeria or a style?
I would
Regional
say
style?
thin. It's crazy because like, we'd go out and get kind of drunk and you'd order. It would be like, that's great in the moment, but like we have really good places here in Bethesda. It's like we have an Indian spot that was like voted best on the East Coast, and like we have all kinds of stuff here. And there's a place, Pizza DeMarco, that's like authentic Italian pizza, and like, man, they have all kinds of pizzas and they're all really great. But like for me, it's just that classic Pine Pep Peen. You can't beat it.
Nice.
And I know that is controversial. A lot of people get offended about the pineapple, but I don't know why, man. It's just so good.
I can't do the pineapple.
Yeah.
But I feel like my thing makes more sense than there's a lot of people who just straight up don't like pineapple on pizza, and I agree with that. But my thing is, I just don't really like pineapple, like on anything.
Yeah,
like so I'm just like, of course I don't like it on pizza. I don't like it anywhere else. So
I'd have to like somewhat agree with you. Like I don't go out and like eat pineapple on the reg. Like I don't know. I'm not really crazy about it, but there's something about the way it works with the jalapeno and the pepperoni and the cheese. Like it's just this like sweet, spicy, salty kind of vibe that just, I don't know. It just rips, man. But I hear you.
Well, I'll let you off the hook for this one just because I like you. So it's fine.
Cool.
Well, dude, thank you so much for hanging out.
Sure.
Maybe we can slide over to Patreon and get really weird with it. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. All right, everybody. For Taylor, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode, people. You know, I appreciated you hanging out. And if you could do one thing for me, if you could share this with a friend. I know I ask for that every week. I'm begging you. I'm begging you to share this with somebody. That is what keeps this going. If you could please, 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 please share this with somebody that you think would enjoy it as much as you do, that would be immensely helpful. The only reason I keep coming back is because you guys keep listening, and it really means the world that this is able to be a thing that people enjoy. And that's because you hit download. So thank you very much. If you want more of this conversation, Taylor and I, we talked for another half hour or so, and you can get that over on Patreon. If you go to tonemob.com/Patreon, not only will you support the show directly, but you will also get a ton of additional bonus content delivered to your ears every week. That is also available if you are an Apple person through the Apple Podcast app under the premium subscription. It costs the same. You get the same content. It just is a little more convenient for some people. So thank you for everyone that's done that. Thank you for all the support over all these years. You are amazing. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for letting me do what I do. I really genuinely mean it. I'll talk to you on the internet very soon. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.